All right, diamonds in the rough, welcome to this week's homework exercise. Last week we had the line control exercise with ghosting and drawing slow lines, and hopefully you guys actually did the exercise and have started applying those techniques to the rest of your art. I think this was one of the most important exercises because line control is one of the most fundamental art skills. You need to get really good at this if you want to become good at drawing. This week's exercise is not going to focus on line control, but I still want you to apply everything that we did in the line control exercise. So every line that you draw has to be drawn intentionally. Try to ghost your lines, make sure you draw your lines slowly. So what we've done up to now is we've drawn boxes, we've drawn cylinders, we've done form manipulation, and we worked on line control a little bit. Those are all pretty fundamental topics, and then this week, I kind of want to make this a two-parter, so we'll do part 1 of the exercise this week and then part 2 of the exercise next week. But this week, I want to work a little bit on perspective. Specifically, we're going to be putting objects inside of boxes, which defines how the object exists in 3D space. And I also saw some people ask where I get these references from. These are just product images from Amazon. But the reason why I want to do this exercise is because boxes define three-dimensional space. So in 3 dimensions, we have a height, a width, and a depth dimension. These dimensions exist perpendicular to each other. So technically, a box is kind of a perfect representation of how these dimensions exist. We have planes that exist in height, they exist in width, and they exist in depth, and all 3 of these planes are perpendicular to each other. Every single object exists in these 3 dimensions, which means that we can place every single object inside of a box. Even an object that's rounded, like this blender for example, it has rounded surfaces, but one part of this rounded surface still exists on the front plane of our box, and part of it still exists on the side plane of our box. It's just like how in 3D modeling you can put a bounding box surrounding every single object, and this box defines how this object exists in space. Right here we have the front plane, then we have the side plane, top plane, and you can see that no matter how you move the camera around, this box is always going to be consistent with how the object is positioned. This website is called Pose Maniacs, by the way, and it has a bunch of different poses, so if you want to do character drawing, you can find a ton of poses here. If we want to get good at drawing in 3 dimensions, we have to start seeing in 3 dimensions. Boxes are basically 3 dimensions, so we have to start seeing things as boxes. This is why people always recommend to use boxes. It's not because boxes are good for proportions or because boxes are easy to draw or anything like that. It's because boxes define 3D space. I really need to hammer this point home because even an object like a cylinder, which is just made of rounded surfaces, even this object can be put inside of a box. And this box defines how the cylinder is rotated in 3D space. The lighting also shows how this thing exists in 3D space because light only illuminates surfaces that are directly facing it. So in this case, the light is coming from here and it's illuminating everything at the front of the cylinder. Everything that's facing away from the light, in this case the side plane of the cylinder, is going to be in shadow. So there's a transition between light and shadow right here, or we could say it's a transition between the planes, meaning the front plane of the cylinder is somewhere around here, and then the side plane of the cylinder is over here. And if this was a box instead of a cylinder, it would be illuminated the exact same way. With the theory out of the way, the exercise is going to be drawing objects inside of boxes, which will define how the object exists in 3D space. And then next week, we're going to draw these objects using simple forms like boxes and cylinders, and we can actually treat these like the guidelines for these objects. You can essentially treat it like a combination of just drawing simple forms like boxes and the form manipulation exercise we did a couple weeks ago. But that's our end goal, and to start with, we need to get an idea of how things exist in space, so that's what we're going to start with. Okay, we're going to start with this. Think about where the lines converge to. We have the width lines going this way, which means they're all converging towards a vanishing point that's over there. And then we have the depth lines going this way, and the height lines are vertical. So we end up with something like this. If you're working in traditional, by the way, and you can't draw on top of the image, then you can just draw it next to it. The only difference is that you're not going to be able to get the proportions right, most likely. But that doesn't really matter because we're just thinking about how the box exists in space instead of trying to proportion it correctly. Next, let's try a cylindrical object, and what's hard about these cylindrical objects is that these technically exist at any rotation until you define what that rotation is. It's like, it's Schrodinger's tuna, basically. If we pretend that this thing is the middle of the front plane, so if we were to see it from above, and we have the front plane down here, then that thing would be over here. In that case, we have to say that this is the front plane, and then our box is going to be at a rotation that's somewhat like this, I believe. Then next, let's try drawing this. And you also have to keep in mind that sometimes these objects won't perfectly fit inside of boxes. It's kind of like with the ribcage, where we draw the ribcage as boxes, but the ribcage itself doesn't perfectly fit inside of a box. Like with this backpack, for example, if we were to look at a side view of it, it would probably look something like this, where the front part is sticking out compared to the body of the backpack, so this front part is not touching the top as well as the bottom of the box. Plus, the whole thing is kind of rounded, so it also won't perfectly follow the box. And up here, I think this might be a bit too high. I'll probably have to place this slightly lower, and then get rid of this. Then let's do this next. This is 3 boxes stacked on top of each other, but the whole thing actually exists as one whole. So instead of just drawing 3 separate boxes, I think we should just draw the whole thing as one box, which defines how the whole thing exists in 3D space. And I think I'll have to align all of these to figure out where the top plane is going to be. Then for this, we have a line here at the front that shows us that the perspective is going that way. The body of the brush shows us that the perspective is going that way. Then I guess the only hard part is deciding where to place the edge, where we transition from front to side plane, and I think it would be right around here. It wouldn't be exactly aligned with this thing because it's a little bit further back in space than this. So I guess place the line a little bit in front of it. And then from here we go back this way. Then on the other side, the vertical is going to be right around there, I think. Height-wise, we just follow the top of the teeth. I think this part of the back of the brush isn't exactly touching the ground. I think it's touching the ground right around here. Meaning, if we draw a line from here to here, this back part is going to be sticking out, so we have to kind of place this line a little bit further back so that the back part of the brush is actually sitting inside of the box. And then from there, I think we just connect the dots. For this object, the front plane is how the wheels are aligned with each other, and then same thing for the side plane, it's how the wheels are aligned. Then the back plane, this thing sticks out past the back of the wheels, I'm assuming, because the wheels are aligned like this, and this thing clearly goes back. So to make sure we place the back plane in the right spot, I think we have to place this top plane first, which follows this perspective. We can see that based on the direction this yellow thing is facing, as well as the direction this is facing. The horizon line is also somewhere around here because we can see the stuff below it converging up and the stuff above it converging down, so the horizon line would have to be around there. I'm going to draw the verticals up right here. And now I think I'm gonna have to very slightly guess. So the top part is going to be going down like this, and then I think we'll place that line right there. That's purely done on intuition. I don't think there are any other clues that can help us figure out how far back this silver thing needs to be. So this is going to be the exercise for this week. Draw bounding boxes around objects. Try to think about how the object exists in space in terms of how it's rotated and how the different parts stick out so that you can draw a bounding box that perfectly encompasses the object. If you want to participate, you can join the Discord server, which is linked in the description. It has all of the other homework exercises as well, so there's a lot of stuff you can do. But I guess I'll catch you all in the next video.